Anse, good evening. I'm Chris Nachkite. Welcome to APTN National News. 4 First Nations within the Niwin Wenda Anamuk, or Four Winds Partnership, signed a memorandum of understanding with the province of Manitoba on Tuesday for the twinning of the Trans-Canada Highway. According to the partnership, the MOU will see the integration of Anishinaabe laws into the project. APTN Sarah Bettens has this report from the Wajuk Onigam Nation near Kenora, Ontario.
Here at the Wajuk Onigam Nations Roundhouse, leaders from Manitoba join leaders from 4 Treaty 3 First Nations in a historic ceremony.
The 4 communities that are part of this partnership and us as a Manitoba government signed this agreement to work together to twin the Trans-Canada. It looks so beautiful here on the Ontario side. Now we want to catch up and maybe surpass Ontario on the Manitoba side.
On Tuesday, Manitoba Treaty 3 Grand Chief Francis Kavanagh and chiefs from the Four Winds communities signed a memorandum of understanding they say incorporates Anishinaabe laws into twinning part of the Trans-Canada Highway. The plan is to connect a 16-kilometer stretch of the highway near the Manitoba-Ontario boundary.
Anishinaabe usually use things in 4. So I heard the environmental, the economic, the health and safety piece, and then of course the respect. And so those are the things that we'll keep in mind.
Shoal Lake 40 First Nation councillor Billy Wape says the MOU marks a historic shift in Manitoba's approach to consultation.
In prior years, consultation was done with a letter, sending it out and seeing if we're going to say yes or no. With this process, they're working with us on a weekly basis to move the project to where it needs to be.
The project will be guided by Manitowaki Ina'a Ko Ni Gawin, an Anishinaabe law describing how to live with the earth in a good way. Chris Skeed is the chief of Wajuk Onigam.
Our laws are sanctioned from Creator. They're not derived from like a courtroom. Direction comes from our ancestors, those spirits who will guide us in the right way. Obviously comes from the lands, the waters, the air, the animals.
The Niwin Wendaniwak, or Four Winds Partnership, was formed in 2018. It includes Shoal Lake 40, Wachagamas Bay, Nisatchewan, and Wajuk Onigam First Nations. Together, they developed the Harmonized Impact Assessment to bring Anishinaabe knowledge into the project planning process. Skeed says it involves extensive consultations with elders and community and takes additional environmental concerns into account.
Maybe there was portions of the mapping that may have went through kind of a water crossing, a swamp where, we go there to pick our medicines, or, perhaps it would displace some type of animals or the ecosystem.
Following the ceremony, the leaders met again to discuss the next steps.
Formalizing a bit more of the steps of the relationship, including some funding conversations. And then from there, like I said, as soon as we can get from the design phase to shovels in the ground, I think everybody will feel good about that.
Leaders from both sides say the partnership could serve as a model for other jurisdictions.
It's historic in nature. It's huge. It's a consultation at the end of the day. That's what it is.
Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Wajuk Onigam Nation, Ontario.
In Manitoba, 2 Indigenous leaders have united to push for economic prosperity for their people. APTN's Sav Jonesa reports.
The Southern Chiefs Organization and Manitoba Métis Federation say they are partnering to advance economic reconciliation for their people. They signed a memorandum of understanding early Wednesday, declaring their intent to pursue an Indigenous-led economic development strategy. SCO Grand Chief Jerry Daniels says it's a powerful statement of unity.
The MOU we are about to sign is more than an agreement between SCO and MMF. It is a commitment to lead together, to prosper together, and to protect the lands and waters for generations to come.
SCO represents 32 First Nations in Manitoba, and the MMF represents tens of thousands of Red River Métis across Canada. The partnership comes on the heels of Bill C-5, also known as the One Canadian Economy Act, which will fast-track major natural resource projects. The MOU outlines a 5-year framework they will follow to ensure their priorities are reflected in those and other development projects.
We are positioning ourselves as active partners, ensuring that First Nations and Red River Métis communities are not just consulted, but are central to the decision-making process.
The two will work together to push for jobs, trade opportunities, sustainable forestry, and harvesting practices. They hope that will result in lasting revenue for generations to come. MMF President David Chartrand says he's been waiting for a partnership like this for almost 3 decades.
Premier Kino, I assure you, will pick this up quickly. When the SCO 31, 32 chiefs come together with my cabinet, province-wide elected, and we join forces to protect our natural resources, our harvesting, and all those that come beside it, it'll be a force to reckon with. We will not just let somebody else decide the fate of the future.
Chartrand hopes their unity will show other Indigenous nations what is possible when they work together.
We'll have differences, trust me, but we'll also have more compatibility than differences. And when we find those differences, we'll find solutions to them, and we'll find how we make, because it'll be the betterment for each of us, not just for himself or me. It'll be for our people.
The MMF and SCO also plan to create a natural resource committee to set rules to ensure sustainable wildlife harvesting. Sav Jonza, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
York Landing First Nation in northern Manitoba declared a state of emergency 2 weeks ago. Today, a protest was held at the Manitoba legislature in support of the community. The community's ferry is shut down due to low water levels, leaving more than 600 people stranded with wildfires burning nearby. The community's other concerns from the low water levels include the growing cost of rising food prices, a potentially contaminated water supply, and expensive flights out for people who need to leave the community. York Landing leadership says it's time for an all-season road to be built and for water to be released from the Churchill River diversion. The province of Manitoba says it's working with Manitoba Hydro to address York Landing's needs, and the utility company is supplying additional boats to help with transportation. Rebecca Chartrand is the MP for the area. She met with York Landing elders and says she is here to ensure that other ministers are kept in the loop and the community has a voice with the right departments.
I am a voice. I have the opportunity to sit with Minister Sala, for example, this afternoon, and to bring your concerns forward once more and to try and find solutions together. So, I'm not here to make promises, but I would love to see an all-weather road in the north, and I will continue to do what I can to support that and to speak to, all of the provincial counterparts and the federal counterparts. So that is the commitment you have from me today.
After a month away from home due to a renewed wildfire crisis, members of the Pimicikamak Cree Nation in northern Manitoba are now able to return home again for the second time. Pimicikamak leadership and Canadian Red Cross have issued a return home notice for community members this week. Residents were forced to leave the community in mid-July when the wildfires shifted and threatened the community again, having just returned once the May wildfire evacuation notice was lifted in June. Flights from Winnipeg have been scheduled for Wednesday, August 13th to take people back home. Chief David Monias reminds people to have all official documents, medications, and personal items before departure. The Yukon Territory has also signed a memorandum of understanding with the U.S. state of Alaska to address the crisis of missing Indigenous people. The MOU was signed in Whitehorse on Tuesday. The agreement intends to strengthen cross-border collaboration on the murdered and missing Indigenous people issue and formalizes commitments on information sharing, improvements to public safety, and healing. It also aligns the Yukon's MMIWG 2S Plus strategy. It's been almost a year since Chiefs voted down a $47.8 billion child welfare reform package. We'll speak with Chief Pauline Frost, who will give us an update after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. It's been nearly 1 year since Chiefs voted down a $47.8 billion child welfare reform package proposed by the federal government. When the deal was rejected, a National Children's Chiefs Commission was established to negotiate a new deal. However, Canada has not come back to the table and is proceeding on an $8.5 billion agreement reached last February with First Nations in Ontario. The Commission met last week to plan ahead of September's AFN Assembly in Winnipeg. Chief Pauline Frost is the chair of the NCCC, and she joins us now from Mayo, Yukon. Chief Frost, thanks for taking some time for us. As mentioned, the Children's Chiefs Commission is trying to negotiate a new deal on child welfare reform, but an update last week made it clear that Canada doesn't seem to want to come back to the table. Why do you think that is?
I would say that at this point, then, I'm obviously we're optimistic. I'm not going to speculate as to why Canada's not coming to the table, but I will say that the National Children's Chiefs Commission clearly has clear mandate from the Chiefs in the Assembly through Resolution 1661, and we have a mandate to go back to Canada to essentially look at family children service reform and look at the Human Rights Tribunal outcomes. And it's important that we don't use a base to go and negotiate a national agreement, but it's also essential because the current agreement they signed off on doesn't reflect all children across the country. It doesn't give adequate and appropriate services and it certainly does not eliminate discriminatory practices with federal and regional policies that govern and support Indigenous children in care. And so, fundamental principles around how it's governed is really a critical piece for us. We need to resolve that so our children can continue to receive the appropriate services. And so, brand new ministers, brand new prime minister. And so, I'm always optimistic as a politician. I sat as a Minister of Health for the Yukon government for almost 5 years and sat at many of the federal tables, provincial, territorial ministers' tables across the country. And I know that there's always this, things will shift and change with respect to negotiations. Yeah. And, I want to be able to get to the table, have a good dialogue with the minister, with Minister Galmasti, and really just frank heart to heart on what the barriers are, because we have an obligation and principle of law should apply when we look at how children are treated, and discrimination just has no place in this country.
Chiefs in Assembly voted on a resolution to establish the commission, but a commission report says the AFN is frustrating your efforts. Can you tell us about that?
Well, I would say that, the National Children's Chiefs Commission has established itself when we were mandated. And so each one of the regions, we have 11 regions that are represented by a commissioner. Majority of us are politicians. We represent the regions. We've been appointed by the regions to implement the recommendation from the Assembly, First Nations Chiefs and Assembly, and that's to move forward with, having dialogue and discussion around the reform and getting Canada back to the table. We're doing it right now without a budget, so everyone that's working, our whole team, our commissioners, along with our negotiating team, our legal team, and our executive team, are working free. Essentially, we've been doing this for months. We're not getting paid. We put forward a submission to Canada with our work plan and our budget to continue on this work, and essentially to help them resolve this massive outstanding issue. And we look to AFN to support us. Not to put the barriers up for us, but to help us to get back to the table. And it's essential. It's essential that we move forward as partners. And right now we don't have that. Things are still, at a bit of a standstill. I want to acknowledge Joanna Bernard, Regional Chief Bernard. She's been appointed recently as the lead for AFN, and just is really keen and enthusiastic. So I want to just say that that's a benefit, and that's I think a huge positive step forward, and we're trying to work towards a mutual agreement.
Yeah. The report prepared for last week's meeting says the $47.8 billion commitment over 10 years is getting closer to the amount required. After a year of work, what is the amount the Commission believes is required?
Well, I would say that, we haven't defined a number because every region clearly needs to look at its unique circumstances. I'll use my region for an example. In the Yukon, we have 14 communities, 11 are self-governing. We have a Crown Indigenous relationship. We base our negotiation on price, population, remoteness, and unique circumstances. So every region will have an approach on what's reasonable for them. At the moment, I think there are 10 outstanding items that we have in the webinar and the reports that have gone out. We're trying to work towards, and I think the key message is we are closer than we realize, right, in resolving the issues and drafting some framework agreement, a framework that will get us closer to a number that we all agree to, because if you look at the original agreement, it speaks about agencies. Well, agencies in my region is the government of Yukon. We want to deliver the services as Indigenous communities. It's for reserve. We have no reserves. We want to talk about all children, no matter where you reside in your region. You need to be able to provide supports. So a lot of our children that are in care, that are in government care, private care, how do we sponsor and support them so that they are successful in life and that they get all the core critical needs that they need as growing children, right? Be it health or educational supports or special supports to be successful. Just removing barriers is our essential target here.
We only have about 30 seconds left, but the AFN will meet in Winnipeg next month and will be discussing child welfare reform. What message is the Commission bringing to that assembly?
Well, of course, we're looking to Joanna Bernard and myself and Cindy Blackstock to take a trilateral approach to resolving this outstanding matter because it's not one particular agency's responsibility. We all have an obligation, and that's what the Chiefs and Assembly mandated us to do. And I think as a chair of the Chiefs Commission, I have a job to do, and that's to bring reason and bring voice for all of the regions in Canada and work that through AFN. And of course, our partnership is really essential to success.
Chief Frost, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you for your time.
Merci, I really appreciate this opportunity. Take care.
We have another story from the Waves Language Conference in Ottawa. We'll be right back. Thanks for staying with us. Time now for our photo of the day. Our Shania Murdoch shared this photo of the sunset-colored sky as seen from the Leo Mole Sculpture Garden in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Thank you, Shania, for the picture. Send us your photos to share at aptn.ca for the chance to be our next photo of the day. Time now to take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. On the East Coast, Fredericton 25 and rain, Halifax 20 and showers there. Cartwright 21, Happy Valley Goose Bay 23. 25 in Quebec City, Montreal 25 and sunny there. Ottawa 26, Sarnia 25. 24 in Sudbury and sunny there, Wawa 19. Norway House 20, The Paw 18 and partly cloudy. Showers in Winnipeg at 30, Gimli 26. 24 in Regina and sunny there, Saskatoon 20. 13 in Meadow Lake, La Ronge 10. 18 in Peace River, Fort McMurray, sunny and 14. Calgary 15, Medicine Hat 20. Vancouver 15, Campbell River 16. 21 in Prince George, Smithers, partly cloudy and 19. Showers in Beaver Creek at 18, Mayo 20. 23 in Fort Liard, Trout Lake 13 and sunny. Sax Harbor 11 and sunny there, Polituck 17. Whale Cove 9, Arvey at 11. And Arctic Bay 6, Aglulik 6 as well. Wednesday marked the second full day of the Global Indigenous Languages Summit in Ottawa. Some of the highlights included online safety tips for Indigenous youth and a presentation on the Hockey Night in Canada in Cree broadcast. APTN's Fraser Needham has more.
You really don't know, based on a name, who you're speaking to on the other end.
Kyla Whitlow is the Director of Diversity, Equity and Inclusion with Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Florida. One of her jobs is to provide youth with online safety tips in an increasingly dangerous social media world. Whitlow says Indigenous youth are often the target of online human traffickers, so they should be armed with the right tools to protect themselves.
We have very large representation in Indigenous youth and in trafficked movements. So unfortunately, with that being the case, it really is important that we cascade what are safe practices. And within that, how are we working with traditional forms of knowledge keeping and understanding, and then relevance for today. So how are they exposing themselves? You would have heard us talk a little bit about, what are those indicators you're giving? What are those locations that you're sharing?
One of the afternoon sessions featured a presentation on the Hockey Night in Canada in Cree program, which is broadcast on APTN. Jason Chamakis has been part of the show since 2019. He is a professional musician, but a serious stroke in 2015 changed his life path. He lost most of his memory, but his Cree language remained largely intact.
No, my Cree language was always there. As a matter of fact, I do remember somebody telling me that when they came to visit me in the hospital that I barely spoke English, that I was always speaking Cree. And so that was never affected. It was always there, but it did take some time for me to start remembering how to say some words. They were up here, but I had to figure out to take my time and so I could say these words more clearly.
As part of his recovery, Chamakis says he watched a lot of Edmonton Oilers games and eventually found his way onto the Hockey Night in Cree broadcast. He says because Cree is a very descriptive language, translating hockey terms from English is not as difficult as one might think.
My analogy is this: if you hear a story in English, it's going to be like in your brain for a younger person, it's going to be like watching a black and white TV with one speaker. But if you hear the story in Cree, then that TV becomes a high definition, big screen television with surround sound. All that much more color, all that much more vibrant. And that's how it is with Cree. It's really descriptive.
The Global Indigenous Languages Conference wraps up on Thursday. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
And that's all the time we have for today's newscast from our HQ in downtown Winnipeg. Kwana Miigwech Masicho. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Ekse.